Chairman. We're now live.
Good morning and welcome everyone present in the chamber and those listening online to the business of the Grove Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Sam French and I am the chairman of this committee. In the absence of a vice chairman, I would like to invite members to nominate a member to support with vice chairman duties for this meeting only. Do we have any nominees? Councillor East, would you?
Can I support Bailey Robinson as being the vice chair?
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Condell? And those in favour? And the vote is carried. And now, Bailey Robinson, would you like to take your place as the vice chairman? All right. The audio-visual feed of this formal meeting is being broadcasted live via the County Council's website, and all your comments will remain accessible online. No fire drill is planned. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, please leave the chamber, exit the building through the reception, and assemble in the front car park. Please have any mobiles, laptops, and iPads on silent mode, and the hearing loop is now activated. Also to note, I don't think it's been mentioned before, but you're on camera, so if you type your password in, there's a chance someone sees that. It's just a thought that could turn out bad in the future for you. Requests to speak will be collated by the Vice Chairman. Please indicate early when you wish to speak, and we'll now move on to the formal agenda with apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillor Reuben Robinson, who's been replaced by Councillor Bailey Robinson. We also have apologies from Councillor Ashley Baxter, being replaced by Councillor Phil Dilks. We also have apologies from Councillor Nick Hastings, with no replacement. Thank you.
Are there any declarations of members' interests? No? Okay, on to the minutes of the previous meeting. This item is to approve and sign the minutes of the last meeting as a correct record. Do I have a proposer? Councillor East, and a seconder? Councillor Condell. And now we will vote on that. Any dissent at all? No? Okay. Pardon? Yep, that's fine. On to the announcements by the Chairman, Executive Councillors and Lead Officers. Members will remember that our meeting in June, an invite was extended by Andrew McLean to host a tour of the newly refurbished Orchard B building on campus. The tour has now been scheduled for the 28th of October, following our next committee meeting business. Calendar invites have been circulated. However, should you not have received one in your mailbox, please liaise with Andrew Warnes after this meeting. No further announcements today. So on to the Executive Councillor announcements. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, another busy period. I'll just go through some points now. We've had approval for our Adult Skills Fund and our Connect to Work business plans, which reflects a huge amount of work from the team, and the opportunity to provide support for people who are struggling in the labour market. And more to follow on this in Jen Eaton's paper this morning. But the next job after consolidating these programmes is to move into how we support careers and higher level skills better and more efficient. Steve Brooks' paper today will explain about the great steps being made on gigabit broadband. Part of the government's investment does, however, need unblocking, and we're in correspondence with the director of Project Gigabit about making sure that all of Lincolnshire's rural communities receive the same good quality service as those places like Chapel St Leonard's and Corby Glen, where new infrastructure is being put in. Members of the committee received a written brief on STEP Fusion at the last meeting. There's been a subsequent briefing to the leader and myself, and we have strong commitment to working with STEP and the partners here in Lincolnshire and in Nottinghamshire to achieve meaningful government investment in the area as a result of STEP. Visits to businesses have continued, including to small and large food businesses alike. The quality of their products and the services is highly impressive, as is their understanding of their customers and their need for highly skilled staff. As well as seeking to help small businesses to tackle problems like business rates, we also need to help businesses to take advantage of the growth opportunities that present themselves. Can all members be reminded to refer business inquiries to www.businesslincolnshire.com, which is where they can find a wealth of useful and updated information. We've written to the Secretary of State urging her to work with us and others to accelerate plans for Scampton, which achieve the biggest local impact. The former base is a great economic asset which enables us to build on the strength of our defence, agri and tourist sectors. This council is committed to optimising Scampton in the best interests of the local community and Lincolnshire as a whole. On the 26th of August, the local MP for Lincoln, Hamish Falconer, questioned our stance on Scampton, which we responded to in a very timely manner. Our position on Scampton hasn't changed. We will do what is in the best interests of growth for the community, county and country. I ask Hamish Falconer to once again reaffirm his pledge that under his party, Scampton will not be used as an illegal immigrant holding centre. The delay under this current government are seriously impacting West Lindsey District Council's opportunity in creating growth, resulting in lost revenue and jobs. And finally, general observations. The majority of council staff we have worked with are indeed excellent people who are really passionate and committed about their work and on the whole provide excellent quality service. The management systems in place that support processes, service delivery and expenditure within the council are very compliant with government regulations. Many of them, however, are very bureaucratic, fixed and inflexible and have created the conditions for a culture to exist within the council that does not ensure best value for money. It does at times stifle innovation and does not promote out-of-the-box thinking that is common in a commercial environment and which should be used to reinforce efficiency whilst achieving value for the taxpayer. The last regime failed to provide the required leadership to drive and promote a culture that should have been built upon innovation, value for money, efficiency, flexibility, transparency and conformity. We, under the direction of the leader of the council, will change this culture and look to reshape constraining factors in order to release staff from the chains holding them down so they can operate with an environment of continual improvement that promotes efficiency, value for money, whilst continuing to deliver quality services as they are now. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. It's particularly good to know about Scampton, considering the reshuffle that's happened in Parliament recently and where we are going with that. So it's very reassuring. Thank you. Councillor Dyer.
Thank you, Chairman, and I welcome Councillor Kelly's comments in respect to Scampton. Just on the latter part of your statement, Councillor Kelly, you highlight a problem, but you don't provide any solutions. Would you like to go into detail on how you're going to unlock the chains of bureaucracy at the council? Would you like to provide any solutions here today, or are you just going to highlight a problem? Thank you.
What I have done, Councillor Dyer, is I've highlighted observations and the solutions to those observations will be coming through in due course. However, those solutions will require buy-in from all stakeholders that are involved so that it's a journey that takes us through change management that ultimately benefits the council and the council taxpayers. Thank you, Chairman.
I take that as a no then, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Are the senior officers, do they have any announcements? No. Oh, Councillor Bowles, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the Scampton issue as a West Lindsey councillor. I appreciate, obviously, the comments made by Councillor Kelly, and I think any lessons that we learnt from the last time around when we did this, you know, it was West Lindsey that held the government to account and went all the way to the High Court, and we got a lot of other people taking the glory off the back of that, i.e. local MPs who had no input into that. So I do welcome the collaboration that seems to be coming at the moment from County Council, and really do hope that we can all work together on this to get the right outcome. So I certainly know West Lindsey officers are ready to stand firm as we did previously and work alongside the County Council. So I do welcome the comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowles. Okay, on to item number 5. Procurement reforms update. This scrutiny report can be found on pages 23 to 42 of the agenda pack. This report updates members on key aspects of commercial practice following the new public sector procurement legislation from 24th of February 2025. It provides early examples of procurement activity under the new framework. The report will be presented by Victoria Eaton, Assistant Director, Commercial, and Samantha Harrison, Head of Economic Development. Over to you, Mrs. Eaton and Mrs. Harrison.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good morning, everybody. I've come today to give you an update on some of the work that we're doing in the commercial team, working collaboratively with others across council in terms of a sort of status update following the new rules that came into existence on the 24th of Feb 25. Some of you may have remember when we came in and sought approval for those. This is the biggest change in public procurement for a long time, 10 years. We've successfully implemented those changes in line with the deadlines. So the purpose of the legislation, just as a recap, is to make things easier for those of us who do tendering and contracts, much more flexible procedures, reducing admin and barriers to small to medium enterprises, and of course with the aim to drive value for money. There is increased transparency, so more notices and publications of contracts and spend will be required. You know, this is just for new requirements, and it's not for existing contracts, so we'll be working under a number of legislations for the short time. We've updated our contract procurement and procedure rules and the Constitution to reflect the changes, very much with a focus on delivery of best value. So the paper talks around some of the sort of improved practices that we've undertaken in readiness for this new regime, and how we're breaking down some barriers. And one of those significant pieces of work is our redrafted documentation. So we've absolutely simplified and standardised our terms and conditions, our contract documents. We've put them into plain English. We're using, so it's still in progress, getting review and standardised feedback on those documentations to make sure that we are not making barriers for organisations and small to medium enterprises who want to work with LCC. We've trained a number of officers in the procurement regulations. 125 officers have been trained, and we have 10 commercial officers that are now trained to the expert level of the Procurement Act. And we have done a significant internal training programme and awareness across the entire organisation. Further activity is ongoing with a commercial training course going to be launched in autumn 25 to make us a more commercially focused council, making sure that people can access the training. One big focus of the Procurement Act has been around creating opportunities for small to medium enterprises. I have put some stats in the paper around how much we do with small to medium enterprises already. However, the focus of the legislation is still around reducing the barriers to SMEs. And we have absolutely focused in on the most advantageous tender, so ensuring that it is not just about price, but certainly about the value that, with a focus on Lincolnshire and those small organisations can deliver for us. We have in the paper talked about some of our early adopters these are the procurements that are going through the Act for initially, and we're using these as examples, and we'll learn from lessons learnt from them in terms of other contracts that come down the route. So you're aware some of these early adopters, and one of them will be talked about later. We are breaking into lots. We are using much more market engagement, innovative ways we can engage with smaller organisations to allow them to bid. We're looking at some of the barriers, such as insurance requirements, which I know has been raised multiple times before, and our processes and documents are much more straightforward. We will seek feedback on the back of those in terms of, so we can have that continuous feedback loop. Furthermore, we'll be doing, the Act requires us to do more activity around prompt payments, particularly those in supply chains and SMEs, and later in the year, as the Act is rolled out further, we'll be publishing our prompt payment activity. One big initiative that we have done, and I have talked about before, is we have launched a new electronic tendering system. We are launching a new electronic tendering system so people can work with us electronically. One of the feedbacks from the electronic tendering system we had before, it was very difficult to use, not user-friendly, and we've really refocused on, and we've sourced one that is hopefully going to be much user-friendly for any organisation, but particularly those in Lincolnshire and those small to medium enterprises who want to work with us. We're rolling this out in 2 parts. At the moment, it's been rolled out for home to school transport, as this was a particular pain point for local taxi drivers and small organisations who do our key education transport routes, and we're rolling it out wider later in the year. I'll just sort of finish off in terms of our engagement work that we've done today. We've been much more engaged in working with the local, with SMEs in the local area, and Samantha will talk a little bit about that. We've updated our website. We're doing lots of more social media activity. We're working very closely with the Federation of Small Business, and we're doing much more targeted comms to create much easier ways for people to engage with us. And you'll see some of the examples in there about some of the early market engagement we've done. Probably that's all I'm going to draw attention to for today. I'll hand over to Samantha in terms of just a few other additional points.
Thank you. So we've been working closely with the procurement team, particularly because in terms of economic development, we have the lead for the Business Lincolnshire Growth Hub. And this is a conduit for us to get messages out to the business community. We do that via a number of means. We have our website, and I'm pleased to say our new website will go live tomorrow. The existing website is up and running. You can access information, but the new one has been updated. But we also have a newsletter that goes out to 5,000 businesses across the patch. That is a dedicated business newsletter alongside our other newsletters for our other services like Team Lincolnshire. So we're able to cascade messages out quite swiftly to the SME community. The other thing that we are doing, we've briefed all our advisors on the Procurement Act. Our advisors are fully funded, are able to go and advise businesses on how to interact with the council, how to look at procurement opportunities. And then we have a dedicated webinar and face-to-face programs, and we've been running these over a number of years where we partner with organisations like the Federation for Small Businesses, like Lincolnshire Chamber, like the district councils, where we showcase public sector procurement opportunities, but also dispelling some of the myths that are attached to how to access public sector contracts. And we do hold how-to sessions. I've got a couple of things here today. So on the website, we've got some new how-to guides. So it's really about easy guides that the businesses can look at in terms of working with local government, top 10 tendering tips, how we can really kind of showcase them to move forward. So these are new guides that we've developed in consultation and jointly with the procurement team that we will be sending the messages out. So the other thing just to say that we are very happy to partner with the procurement team at any event. So if you'd like anybody to speak about public procurement opportunities, we can do that, and we can host events as well. We've got a number of events planned in for the year, but also we've got a number of conferences that the team are jointly talking about. One thing that I'm particularly keen to do, that when we do talk about these procurement opportunities, we bring in existing suppliers to the council so they can talk with their peers about how easy it is to access public sector contracts, anything to be mindful of, and share best practice amongst themselves. So happy to open up to questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And on to questions. Councillor Condell.
Yes, thank you very much for the hard work. It looks very impressive as things are going. I have noticed, though, in there that over 40% of the contracts are given to people or businesses outside of the Lincolnshire area. Is there any way that we can bring more of that into Lincolnshire? Is it a question of education for the business of Lincolnshire, or is it bigger than that? They just don't exist in Lincolnshire.
I think it's a bit of everything that you've said. So absolutely, I think we need to do some work with, and actually Councillor Kelly and I were speaking about this yesterday, so we're about to publish the pipeline of future opportunities. Just I was mentioning it to Samantha earlier that we'll promote that to encourage local suppliers to bid. We can run some sessions. We've obviously got the how-to guides. I think Lincolnshire, we probably need to do some work on the market as well. We don't necessarily have some of the services and organisations and suppliers that we need. So I think we need to look at that pipeline and work out where the gaps are, perhaps do work again with the team in terms of can we develop. And I actually instructed some of my colleagues yesterday to publish the pipeline and then reach out and say, where have we got some gaps and can we do anything to fill the market? So I think it's a bit of both. We need to promote and then we need to look at the gaps and where we don't have necessarily suppliers in Lincolnshire. I think inevitably sometimes we will have to award contracts outside. We might then need to think about supply chain opportunities, and that's something that we're probably not yet at in terms of, you know, can you use Lincolnshire suppliers? You know, that would be great from a social value for a small bit. So that's kind of on our development path, I think. At the moment, where obviously we have been just focused on getting the new legislation done, but this is certainly work in progress for us, and we will continue to spread the Lincolnshire priority. We are sort of limited around the rules about, you can't say you must be a Lincolnshire-based business, but, you know, I think we've got some creative and innovation and we've got some ideas about how we can do that. So absolutely, I think you'll see some more of that over the next few months. And I'm certainly, we can update you in due course on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Councillor East.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, Councillor Condell pretty much took that question away from me. But great work, and good to see that you are thinking outside the box already as how we grow, you know, small businesses in the county. Within the most advantageous tender matrix, does it have a Lincolnshire first a model, effectively?
Not explicitly. I think what we would need to do is obviously we will need to be, you know, and I'll have to, work with officers to think about how we can do that. And obviously, we've got to put some examples in the paper. For example, in the Connecting for Work, we've said you need to have knowledge of Lincolnshire. In others, we've called it out as part of an evaluation structure, but it won't be the only thing. So yes, we are starting to test that out, and we'll continue to grow and learn. But we obviously, the whole rules around public sector procurement is we've got to be fair, open, you know, treat everyone the same, so we can't do that. But we are certainly testing, and we're willing as a team to explore the opportunities to say, you know, you need to respond within a certain amount of time, so that links to the area. So we've had some good discussions on that in terms of the art of the possible. So we are looking at how we can support that via the legislation and by the ways we can.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for the report, and I think the emphasis on making things as simple and easy as possible for businesses, and this outward approach to what businesses need, and the tutorials and videos will be great for that. Just the report sets out measures to support SME participation. How will the council specifically measure whether these measures deliver additional SME market entry? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Quite a hard one for me to answer, actually. So at the moment we've got measuring, we measure obviously spend, and we are able to record whether they're SMEs or not, and we can do that. Any other measurements are quite hard. You know, we don't necessarily capture SMEs via the tender process, so I need to look into it, and we need to sort of develop that further. I mentioned our new e-tendering system, and I think we can use that when that goes live in terms of we'll be able to capture how many bidding. So it might not be that they win business, but we can start getting some intelligence around how many participate we in getting that increased growth. we need to get some feedback, and in the paper it mentions about we want to use more, we want to get more feedback from suppliers to show us that. So I think it's hard with my current tools available to be able to measure it as well as I like, but we've certainly got some ideas about how we can look at some measurements to be able to give you a flavour of the progress we're making and whether it is making an impact, some of the activity we're doing. So that's one. We'll come back with a story in the future, I think, in terms of how this is landing and whether we're seeing any improvements. And it might be just from surveys and information from suppliers, and you might get feedback from suppliers in your areas in terms of it's been a good process or it hasn't or whatever. So, yeah.
Councillor Arundel. Hi, thank you very much for your information. As a small businessman myself, I would like to know whether the small businesses, and certainly in my area in Boston, they may not know how to tender, and I understand you've made that simpler, but also would you be offering some sort of training to be able to get them registered, to help them to be able to be in a position to tender? And maybe would you be doing some sort of road show? Maybe you could come to Boston Library and we could advertise it locally that you are there to help them do that. Could we set some dates? And I'll be happy to promote it. Obviously, I think as councillors, we bridge the gap between you and small businesses. And there's a lot of good small businesses in Boston.
I think
and
Samantha's
I'd like
going to answer this, but I think a commercial team should be out there and talking much more with suppliers. So, happily support some sessions to work with suppliers and find out what the opportunities are. But you're the mechanics behind it, aren't you?
Yeah, certainly. Very happy to set events up and road shows. Really keen to do that in partnership. So what we've learned in the past, if we do it with the multiple of suppliers, then the businesses get a lot out of it. So they understand the mechanisms of how to look at public sector. Sometimes we've done it with the NHS before, and we've done it with the University of Lincoln, so that what the businesses can have a number of public sector organisations that they can look at. So happy to look at a roadshow programme. We will have an online programme, and we will have some face-to-face events across the patch. And we do have our advisors that are on the patch that will be able to talk through. So I'll connect with you afterwards, and we'll talk about a programme if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'd like something to be able to share on Facebook, because I find a lot of businesses use Facebook. And if there's some sort of links that I could direct people to start that application. So yeah, if you could come back to me and with dates, then I can try and help promote that in Boston.
Yes,
I think Councillor Kelly might be able to add something.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to reinforce the messages coming there from Victoria and Samantha as well, and just add that we will be consulting with external stakeholders, i.e. the Federation of Small Businesses, the Chamber of Commerce, etc., and promoting these innovative solutions going forward, whilst also using those external agencies to collate data on growth as well. So that's validated data coming back from external stakeholders to support our own internal gathering of data as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Corey.
Thank you, Chairman. Sadly, I must object to the somewhat patronising tone expressed by a couple of members of the ruling group, specifically finally thinking outside of the box when applied to our officers. I've worked with our officers for many years, even before we started working in Lincolnshire County Council, and I can attest to their experience working in and with the commercial sector. It's not true, and I would like to refute, yes, thank you, Councillor Kelly's opening remarks that our team don't have the requisite tools to do the job required. They do. I have worked with them for many years, and I can also attest that their experience is exemplary, and maybe the ruling group could learn a lot from their professionalism and their knowledge of the details, sadly lacking.
Thank you. And Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Councillor Corey, for your valued feedback. Much appreciated. However, my observations are based on my observations, and my observations, point to room for improvement. And if an organisation is not willing to reflect internally and identify those rooms for improvement, then that is an issue with an organisation, and dare I say it, with the leadership of that organisation. But once again, thank you for your observations.
Councillor East.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just looking at page 30 in the Eastern Shire's purchasing organisation, does that kind of group really undermine Lincolnshire First?
No. I think obviously it's a framework provider that we are a member of, we get a rebate of. And I think we've given you a flavour that actually only a small amount of what we put through our tenders go to ESPO. My view is we need them. We can certainly work with them. We're a member to influence what suppliers are on there. I don't think it undermines what we're doing. I think sometimes we need quick routes to market so we can focus on the ones where actually we can get more out of the market and spend the time. What we don't want to be spending time on is straightforward stuff where we know we're not maybe going to award it to a Lincolnshire supplier and things like that. So I think, to be honest, we need both. And we, of course, as a member, do get a monetary rebate at the end of the year. So there is an incentive for us as a council to ensure that we get the best value, and that best value would be using that particular organisation for straightforward stuff. Yep.
Councillor Dyer.
Thank you, Chairman. And interesting point, actually, from Councillor East just then. And I just flicked through the report as you said that. I think 2.2.2, it says that the amount of work currently going through frameworks is 19. So I wouldn't say that's a small amount at all, really. I mean, that the point made by Councillor East, I'd probably say stacks up. But just the points that I wanted to make, and one for Samantha, really, because I remember many a year ago, I think I did a speech, didn't I, at the Bentley, through the FSB at one of those procurement events. And you don't get many businesses go, but you seem to get a few, and it's quite nice for them to have a Q&A with various stakeholders. Do you know, roughly, how many of those events do we hold a year? And what is the turnout like? I appreciate if you haven't got the stats on you now. I don't want to put you on the spot. But do we get a steady stream of new organisations coming to these events? Or is it just the same people coming to them over and over again? I'd just be interested to know that. And I may have missed it within the report, Chairman, so I do apologise. You can look at many different definitions of SME. Just for the purposes of this, can you define SME when it's referenced in this report? What does that relate to, please, Victoria? And it's really interesting, actually, listening, Victoria, to your comments in respect to how I think we all support wanting to support local businesses, spending taxpayers' money in Lincolnshire. But actually, you're working within the constraints of the legislation and the Procurement Act. And I found your comment then, Victoria, about local knowledge of Lincolnshire and wording like that in the contract particularly interesting and insightful. So it'd be fascinating to see, once this is all implemented, how that looks at the other end, and if we are getting more Lincolnshire businesses through the system. And I think it's been mentioned by somebody as well. It's all well and good having a Lincolnshire business bid and receive a contract, but if their supply chain is in, through into Asia or whatever, what good is that actually doing for the local manufacturing industries? I'd question that. Whereas actually, if the contract went to a Derbyshire business, let's say, but their supply chain was into Lincolnshire or on the Lincolnshire border, is that better for the Lincolnshire economy? I mean, back of an envelope calculation, I'd probably say yes. So do we take all of that into account as well when we're looking at contracts? And finally, I know I've already said finally, but it's something that came into my head. You did mention when you were talking, Victoria, the part of the this process is the taxi drivers and through the home to school transport. And I know there's a significant amount of money spent on that. If you took those out of the system, because by definition, you sort of have to be local, don't you, to provide a taxi service, what do the figures look like if you were to remove home to school transport from the council's procurement? Because I would suggest that's probably a bit of a blip in the system. And how would the figures look if you remove those from the system? just because I know 50 odd million a year, isn't it, spent on homeschool transport. It's a lot of money and that would skew the data. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I will answer your first question. So we have quite a range of events that throughout the year. So previously it's been sort of 3 to 4, but what we do is tailor it to a sector. So we have some for the construction sector, some for some of our business support sectors. So on average, we get a mixture. Sometimes it's a full conference room. Sometimes it's, you know, sort of 12, 15 people that are really wanting to get involved. So I haven't got the numbers to hand today. But the other thing that we have started doing, and it's been working really well, is the pre-market engagement. So where we know we've got a large procurement opportunity of getting in all of the suppliers, inviting them from our data lists and briefing them in one room straight away, and then helping them shape the procurement process, talking about what we're thinking we might do, what the opportunity will look like, what the payment mechanism will look like, understanding best practice, and then we put that into a model. So we're trying to flip it both ways. One about getting the businesses to help shape the procurement, and the other side about giving them the tools and techniques to be able to procure effectively into the council. So, but there will be more events moving forward. Thank you.
Right, you asked a fair few things. The definition of an SME is defined in the Procurement Act, and it's linked to assets and size. So I'll send it to, and we can circulate it because I don't want to get it wrong. And I know it's 250 employees and I can't remember the turnover. So I'll send that round, but that's the one we use as defined in the legal framework. In terms of your comment about the supply chain, wholeheartedly agree. And actually, I will say we, in some contracts, we understand the supply chain, but I don't think we do that overall. And it's something that we have talked about, is what we call supply chain mapping, and we need to do some work on that. So that will be part of our programme in terms of understanding the supply chains and the tiers and where that goes. So it's something, you know, I think I've talked about before actually, in terms of we need to do some of that work. So yes, you're quite right. It might be that the contract isn't in Lincolnshire, but we know that beneath it there is a, you know, a vast array of Lincolnshire enterprise within it, but we don't necessarily have some of that on it, and it goes back to which contracts do we want to focus in on. So things like the Connect to Work framework, we've got quite a lot of intelligence around that, so we will be doing more of that moving forward. But certainly we don't necessarily have it on all our contracts. And what was the final question? It was, I've forgotten, what was the last one?
Taxis.
Oh, taxis, of course, how could I forget that? I've written home to school, I just couldn't understand my writing. So yes, I think if we took many of those home to school taxi drivers and small operators out, I suspect it would make quite a significant impact on the data. I have the data, so what I'll do is I'll go away and we'll try and see if we can work out and take that out, and we'll give you a flavour of what that would look like. I quite like having them in there. I think, you know, they are the ones we want, you know, they are local SMEs, so why would we want to take them out? But yes, absolutely. You know, often they're one-man bands or one-woman bands, so yeah, it would affect the figures. We need to look at how we're going to drive forward more SMEs working with Lincolnshire, for Lincolnshire, but we need some more time to do it. You know, we've made good progress, so yeah, it would affect the figures by taking them out.
Councillor Kelly's got something to add.
Thank you. Just to reinforce the responses by Samantha, I attended the last Federation of Small Businesses meeting here at in the council. There were approximately 40 local business represented. It was a couple of months ago. We've got it in the diary. It will be a quarterly activity. Katrina and the team are all over it. And at the meeting, one of the key things and key questions that we ask the businesses is, you know, and we ask all the businesses when we go around and visit them, is, you know, one of the first questions is, what are the 3 things that keep you awake at night, less for your partner's snoring? It's so that we can have a full understanding of what those actual, you know, what's concerning them that's keeping them awake, commercially wise, so that we can identify trends within the commercial market. So we, you know, we don't create success. We create the conditions and support businesses in their success. And it's important that we keep our finger on the pulse in order to be able to identify shifts and everything else as well, so that we can support as and when required. So yeah, and it was a good meeting, and long may it continue. Also, in regards to suppliers operating outside of the county, and it's a part of the journey of continual improvement, is, you know, part of the due diligence process is always identifying your upstream and downstream supplier risks. And, you know, the council, you know, is engaged with that. And obviously with that will be the commercial aspect as to, you know, your supply chain. Where is your supply chain located? Is it located in Lincolnshire? So that all elements you know, that impact on revenues and etc. in Lincolnshire will be taken into account to ensure that, you know, the optimum provider is contracted and awarded a contract that ultimately benefits Lincolnshire and the council taxpayer. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor East.
Thank you, Chairman. And just taking the lead from Councillor Kelly there, talking about contract management, I noticed on page 32, 2.4, there's obviously a £5 million threshold for KPIs to kick in. But is that not the case? Because, I mean, obviously KPIs are important, that we get the best value for even on lower contracts.
So that's to be published. So KPIs will apply in any contract that we award. Obviously, they need to be proportionate and suitable. But where in the new regime, it's only those with a contract value of 5 million that have to be formally published and shared about the supplier's performance. So that's the nuance of but absolutely, we will put KPIs into all our contracts as appropriate. So very, very keen to make sure we are getting the right service from our suppliers.
Thank you. I have a question as well about the e-tendering. Thank you for taking the time out to show Councillor Kelly and I that new system. And the old system was about 10 years old, and at the time when you get a lot of bids, it actually crashed, right? And which is antithetical to kind of the outcome you want. You want it to be working perfectly when everybody's using it.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering, given this contract is 7 years, is there anything in place to compel the supplier, Panacea, to keep it functioning in a way that works for us? Because I imagine 10 years ago that software probably was fine, but after 10 years maybe it's not been updated to the latest systems.
The total value of the total length of the contract, 7 years. We're not committed to the full 7 years at this moment, but absolutely we have. You know, the contract is written in a way that there will be performance measures, but with any system, you know, there are also, if systems go down, there'll be I can't think of the word, but metrics to be able to sort that out. Absolutely, the reason why we've chosen a new e-tendering system now. There is a new version of the existing system. We've decided not to go to that because it's not user friendly. We've made a decision to use a different system, because we think it will make the experience. And much of the issues were around the taxi drivers who really struggled with our old system, to ensure that we LCC are easy to do business with. So I feel, you know, we will keep an eye on this. This is my only probably contract that sits in the portfolio, so we will be keeping a real eye on it, making sure it delivers what it says it does. And we need to make a decision moving forward if it still fits that purpose. So, and of course, with any contract, there is, you know, ways to get out of contracts. So if necessary, there are those options.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? No? Okay. We will move on to the suggested proposal then. I move that the committee endorse the report, that our satisfaction be recorded in relation to the report and assurances received by officers, that we acknowledge the Council's successful implementation of the new procurement regulations and its ongoing work with early adopters. We recognise the positive steps taken to support SME engagement and access to opportunities through the procurement, and we support continued efforts to embed commercial best practice and deliver social value, and that we support the Council's approach to addressing modern slavery risks through the publication of its 2025-26 commitment. Finally, ask that our comments from today's discussion be cascaded across relevant teams and shared with the portfolio holder for their information and relevant actioning. Do we have any Supporters? Going to need some more support than that. Yep. Oh, sorry, yeah. Proposer. Oh. No, it doesn't need one. Sorry. Yeah. It looks almost unanimous anyway. Okay. Moving on to the item 6 broadband programme. Scrutiny report can be found on pages 43 to 50 of the agenda pack. This report updates members on broadband in Lincolnshire, highlighting the council's long-standing role in extending provision beyond the private sector, the complexity of delivering across multiple partners, and the council's plans to provide infrastructure in areas not covered by the government's Project Gigabit. The report will be presented by Stephen Brooks, the broadband programme manager. Over to you.
Thank you very much. What I'll do before we go through the detail of the report, if I may, is I'll just give you a very, very brief history of where we were for those who may not be aware of where we started off. And we'll come out to where we are, and then we can talk about what we are planning to do for the future. So going back to 2013, across the UK, BD UK, Broadband Delivery UK as they were then, decided to work with local bodies to deliver what they then called superfast broadband to as many premises across each of the counties as they could. So superfast eligibility for said project was based upon the fact that you didn't have that kind of commercial provision already existing at your property. So, for instance, if you already had Virgin Media at your home, you weren't eligible. So we took the project on, and we started what was one of the biggest projects in the UK at the time. We managed to deliver that on time and significantly under budget at that point, which allowed us then to look at a second contract to extend superfast broadband further out into the infrastructure. At that point in time, it was all a case of trying to deliver as many premises for the money as we could. And it wasn't until later on, of course, that BD UK recognised the fact, well, hang on a minute, there's a bit of a gap. It's called the rural community. So we moved on from where we were. We then moved into a third contract with BD UK and Quickline Communication, where we changed the technology from fibre to the cabinet, as it was in those days, to fixed wireless access, as they called it. So essentially, it was line-of-sight broadband from a mast to a premises. We successfully managed to deliver that as well. The original condition was that we provided ultra-fast broadband, which was download speeds in excess of 100 megabits per second. As time went on, the technology changes. I mean, the amount of money that's invested in telecom technology, as you'll imagine, is massive, and technology moves very, very quickly, such that we now have a situation where we have over 8,000 premises that we provided that can, many of them can get speeds in excess of 400 megabits across a line-of-sight link. So that technology is, I'll talk about that a little bit later on and how useful that might be to us as we progress with our gigabit deployment. So that was the three contracts that we had originally. We've just finished the third contract now, in as much as the deployment finished about a 12-month ago, but we're still in the process of closing it down, going through all the various intricacies of signing it all off with BD UK. But pleased to say that that was on budget, on time, and that's been delivered. So then we now move on to Project Gigabit, and for those that are not maybe necessarily too familiar with it, what it actually is, it's the government's attempt to go as far as around about 99% coverage of gigabit capability across the whole of the UK. What they will do is they are looking to provide to premises that were not originally covered by the commercial providers. As you would expect, commercial providers go for the low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit, of course, would be the larger urban clusters. So again, not unsurprisingly, the rural areas were left without. And of course, being the kind of county that we have massive rural swathes of land, and therefore we kind of suffer from poor broadband in those areas, probably more worse than many other areas of the UK. So Project Gigabit is a position where the government have cut down or carved up the UK into what they call lots. I can't quite get my head around the logic of where the lots come from, but this county is covered by 4. We've got lot 23, which is the bigger one, lot 10, lot 5, and lot 7. So there's a bit of a strange anomaly with the numbers, but you know, work with me on that if you will, and we'll see if we can get around that in a minute. So moving on to the actual numbers, I mean, lot 23 is by far and away the biggest. That's been awarded to Quickline Communications. They were all tendered out to industry, and people were, or companies were able to bid for those contracts. So Quickline Communications won lot 23, which includes the East Riding of Yorkshire and North and North East Lincolnshire. As far as this company is concerned, there are currently 47,000 premises that are included in lot 23. Lot 23, as you'll see from the map, primarily covers the east and the southeast of the county. Quickline are moving along quite swiftly on that. They started earlier on in the year. They've currently upgraded over 6,000 premises in rural areas of the county. And as Councillor Kelly alluded to, we're now starting in Corby Glen and Chapel St Leonard's are the next 2 that we're moving into. So there's significant progress in those areas. On top of that, then we have what we call lot 10. Lot 10 is the second biggest one in the county, and that includes the west of the county, West Lindsey, moving over into Nottinghamshire, and also includes Nottinghamshire. Now, the sad reality of lot 10 is that that was started again earlier this year through a company called Connexin that had won that contract. But unfortunately, that contract was taken over, or Connexin sold out to City Fibre. The result being at the moment, the City Fibre have not actually started lot 10. They're going through a process of redefining the areas that they're going to work in and coming up with a deployment plan, and they've been given 6 months to do so. Councillor Kelly's already written and engaged with the director of BD UK to ask what is going on, and you know, when can we have some progress and when can we have some news, because clearly great news in the east but not so great in the west. So we're trying to get some sanity on that, and as I say, Councillor Kelly's pushing hard on that. Hopefully we'll get some news as to which premises are going to be done and when fairly shortly on that. The 2 other smaller areas, lots 5 and 7, both contain about 3,000 premises each, and they are in the south and southeast of the county. Lot 5 is run by Cambridgeshire because the vast bulk of lot 5 is in Cambridgeshire, and lot 7 is being run by Norfolk because, again, the biggest part of that is in Norfolk. So that's kind of where we are at the moment, but we are aware, obviously, that there's a large number of premises that are still not covered within that, within those numbers. I mean, if you look at the figures for gigabit coverage of the county, the industry accepted figures that everyone uses, which includes industry and the government, show 81% coverage of gigabit capability across the county. So if you look at the numbers that they quote in terms of premises count, that actually leaves you about 74,000 premises that are not covered by gigabit capability as we sit here now. And if you look at the numbers then that are in lots 23, 10, 5 and 7, and the additional premises that they're planning on pushing in, if that were all to come to fruition, you'd only be left with 1,000 premises without. Truth of the matter is that when we look at BD UK's data analysis, the recent one I've seen this morning shows that actually the 81% probably looks near to 70% if I believe their figures. So taking that into account, and we get it without getting into too much detail around numbers, that would leave us with about 40,000 premises that are not going to be covered in the Project Gigabit at this point in time. So there is an exercise to continue to go through those premises and see if we can add more into the Project Gigabit. Clearly, the more we can add in, the better it is for us, and the less we then have to look at about what else can we do in terms of covering those premises off. So one of the exercises that we're engaged in is trying to get to a position where we understand exactly what premises are not going to be covered by Project Gigabit. I mean, you know, as a betting man, if you were a betting man, you'd say that they would be the very remote areas, and I'm certain that will be the case, simply because the cost of providing fibre out to those areas is astronomical. If you look at the money that's in Project Gigabit at the moment, and if you look at the budgets that they've set up until 2028, that money doesn't exist to go to that those further premises. So what we're looking at is what can we do in the meantime to try and give those people out there something that actually works and they can do something with. The difficulty we have is that we would like to use things like fixed wireless for provision into those areas, because the flat terrain, if you like, lends itself to that technology. The difficulty is that we can't clearly define what premises are left, and so therefore we can't spend any money on it as we speak today, because if we do, we might find that BDUK subsequently overbuild it next month, next year, and so on and so forth. So hence the reason why we are pushing, and Councillor Kelly's pushing for the defined deployment plan for Lot 10, so that we can nail down the numbers and start getting something out of those premises. Now, the difficulty is with trying to reach those premises is currently BDUK, the use of BDUK's public funding is restricted to the provision of gigabit capability. That is a condition that sits in that use of money. What we are trying to do is persuade them to take another look at that and say, well, look, it's not realistic at this point in time with the money that we don't have to try and put a fibre all the way out to some of these more remote areas. So why don't we just relax the condition a little bit and say, we will give you gigabit capability where it's humanly possible, but where we can't at this point in time, we will give you maybe a fixed wireless link or a satellite link, which will give you several hundred megabits of download speed, which is infinitely better than what you have at this point in time, with a view to possibly upgrading to fibre as we move forward. So that's kind of the conundrum that we are working within at the moment. The actual delivery of Project Gigabit looks to be going very well. Sadly, it's moved out to 2032 now for completion from its original date of 2030. But you know, we are where we are with that. So hopefully, I think that looking at what's going on with Lot 23 in particular, my gut feeling is that I will finish at the end of 2028 anyway. So you know, we're making good progress on that one. So I'm not getting too bogged down with the 2032 at this point in time. So moving on from that, we then have a thing that we've worked with or a scheme that we've worked with for a number of years called the Rural Gigabit Voucher Scheme. And the Rural Gigabit Voucher Scheme was a scheme that was brought in by BDUK, and it would give anybody that was eligible in rural areas a voucher for £4,500 to provide gigabit broadband to their premises. And that included small businesses and it included residential premises. So what we did at that point in time, we worked with operators such as Net Omnia and OpenReach and Quickline and various other providers out there to work with communities, to get communities to pool together the £4,500 each that they would be entitled to into a collective pot. And then the provider would look at the amount of money that was in the pot and say, okay, yeah, there's enough in there now to encourage me to go for that. And we successfully delivered quite a few schemes across the few years that was running. Why do we like that scheme? Well, the scheme is great because, one, it encourages communities to get together to do that. So therefore, that shows a demand that exists, and it shows providers a demand that exists. And secondly, the SLA that sat around that particular project at the time was that they had to, the provider had to complete within 12 months of signing up. So the good news was that if you signed up for the scheme and the money was all agreed, then within 12 months you've generally got your gigabit capability. So that's been put on hold at the moment as BDUK consider how to revise it, whether they need to revise it, or whether or not to try and shift some of the premises that might have been eligible into Project Gigabit. But we are waiting to see what their view is on that, and I think we'll get something in their autumn budget as to what they're planning on doing. But certainly it's a very, very useful scheme, and one that, should it come back in its original format, we will be pushing parishes and communities very, very hard to try and take it up and drive it on. So then we get on to commercial provision. A few years back, there was a great deal of interest from a lot of funded providers, smaller providers, if you like, what they call alt-nets, alternative networks, to provide fibre to the premises across the county, as indeed they did with many other counties in the UK. They were, as I said, they were funded by private funding that they had, and the aim was to go out and provide as much fibre as they could for the money that they had. Again, not unsurprisingly, they went for the low-hanging fruit. They went for the Lincolns of the world and the Granthams, the Sleafords, the Bostons of the world. But to be fair, they very successfully delivered quite a number of premises that gave people a choice, if nothing else, in those areas, and provided gigabit capability to areas where it didn't exist at that point in time, or there was only one provider there. Unfortunately, because of the economic climate that we find ourselves in, that's slowed down significantly at the moment. So any plans that a lot of them had, or a lot of the big plans that they had, have just been put on hold for now. And obviously there's been some coming together of some of those smaller companies into bigger companies, which again was predictable, if you like, when all of this kicked off. But nevertheless, they are still, some of them are still working here. We meet with them regularly, and we encourage them. We do everything we can to try and assist them to get their delivery out as quickly and as efficiently as possible. It's in everybody's interest to have this level of choice that will exist, if nothing else. So it's again, it's something that we encourage, and we work very closely with the providers. Then we get on to this, the next one, which is the 5G fixed wireless infrastructure. Well, you remember that I said with the fixed wireless earlier on, I said that we were looking at 400 megs across a line of sight link. Well, that's based on the 5G technology that they're using. And one of the things that we are trying to do as well, or one of the things that we've started doing, is engaging with our farming community to discuss with them the possibility of providing 5G mesh technology to their farms, which of course will fire up the tractors now that doesn't require a driver, and all the other technology, the monitoring of crops, the monitoring of animals, etc., that requires a 5G link. So we met with a number of the providers out there at the moment. There is interest in it. It's a little bit slower than we would have liked, but nevertheless, it's something we're looking at. And we're also working with the university up at Rysholm on the top here, looking at, again, they've got a 5G mast up there, and we're working with providing some 5G technology up there for them, so that they can carry on experimenting and developing the technologies that's working on up there. So it's something that, again, we think is a very, very useful technology, and certainly something that will benefit our farming communities when the time comes. But as with everything else, it requires a fibre infrastructure to be fairly close to it, so it'll work. We get back to the same story of infrastructure. Infrastructure is key to all of this, and I kind of, in my own small mind, I kind of liken it to a very simple thing where I go out and buy myself this brand new Ferrari because I just won the lottery, and I'm really pleased with this. But actually I can't drive it because I've got a farm track, that's all I've got. So the infrastructure doesn't allow me to drive my Ferrari. And so if you look at that another way, all the technology that's coming through that these businesses can use and residents can use, the medical profession can use, of course, requires the infrastructure to allow it to drive over. And that's really where we are coming from, is, let's work on that. And then we get on to my least favourite of all, is the mobile coverage, because working with the mobile guys, I'd have to say, is not the easiest thing in the world. They're very commercially driven, it's fine. They have their set deployment plans. Much of it doesn't really include rural areas because, oddly enough, they're not commercially viable for them, so they kind of get away with providing what they can get away with providing. There is a shared rural network scheme that the government have run and trying to fund, where they try and encourage the 4 current providers to become a 5th company and share infrastructure that the government provides in rural areas to make sure that coverage is better in those places. But again, that's very, very slow. It's not delivering massive numbers. The figures that the mobile guys quote are population figures, not land area coverage. So if they're quoting 88% or 90% or 100%, it's population, not land area. And of course, there's a big difference in those because, oddly enough, most of the population are in bigger clusters. However, there is some good news on this. Elon Musk and his Starlink operation and Vodafone are both working on a technology which allows the satellite links to provide 4G mobile coverage to areas where it doesn't currently exist, and that actually doesn't require these guys to have a satellite phone. So your iPhone or your Samsung that you currently have will work with that technology. So if you're in an area where there's no coverage, that will potentially give you the coverage. Again, that's the good news. That's only now recently been announced by Vodafone. Elon Musk and his Starlink have announced it as well, but at the moment it's only working in the US, and I think it's Germany and Australia at the moment. So it's coming. We think in 2026 you'll see Vodafone have said that they will have significant coverage across the whole of the UK through 2026. And Starlink will obviously be very competitive in that space, and I suspect we'll see that coming from them as well. So again, that does give some options for people out there with poor coverage in terms of that. So that's kind of where we are with the fixed wireless. We will continue battling with those lads, but we'll see how it goes. Then we get on to the broadband budget. I mean, as I said earlier, the difficulty that we have at this point in time is that trying to define exactly what we're going to spend where and when is governed mainly by the fact that until we know what numbers are out there, what premises are out there, what areas are out there, what technologies we're going to use, it's very, very difficult to commit that funding to that, with any degree of certainty at this point in time. What we do know is it isn't going to be cheap. The hope is that the government will relax the conditions on gigabit in some of those areas, and we can work with them so we can fund it along with them to try and get the best coverage out there that we can. There is some money in there that comes back from what they call gain share and clawback, which are off the first contracts as part of an agreement or arrangement that that formed within that contract. 50% of that belongs to BDUK because of the way the funding was provided. All the money that came back from clawback came to us, and then BDUK will kindly provide us with an invoice at some point to give them their half back. So we're still waiting on that arriving. I'm sure it'll be shortly. So, the big numbers that you sometimes see, they are not necessarily as big as they are because obviously this clawback exists. So then we go on from there, and we then get on to the rather thorny subject of digital exclusion or digital inclusion, depends on which way you want to shake it. It's a big subject, it's a big issue for a lot of people. There's much being written about it at the moment, and there's no simple solution to fix it, in as much as there are many, many reasons why people are digitally excluded. Financial might be somewhere they just can't afford the equipment. Where they live, the infrastructure doesn't exist. Some of it then is age-related, dare I say, where a number of people might say, well, I don't really understand this, so there's an education process to get people to use the equipment that's available. Again, the health service are keen on trying to get everybody included if they can, because clearly if they can get everybody online and using some of the systems that they have, it will save them a significant amount of money going forward. We also see the same with adult social care, where if we can get the infrastructure out to these places, then we need not necessarily move people from their homes if we can monitor them in the homes with the equipment that exists. But so the exclusion bit is quite a big thing. We are working with the providers out there to try and see what can be done. Quickline, as a part of their contract, and certainly City Fibre, as part of their contract, will have certain commitments around social value, if you like, where they will provide community hubs. They will provide, they will go to schools, they will give out iPads, they will go out equipment to communities to try and get people online. We're also working with an estate up in East Lindsey where they are setting up a digital hub for rural businesses, and we are working with them to provide them with some fibre link or a fibre link up there to get that off the ground so that they can teach the rural businesses in the area about artificial intelligence and so on and so forth. Also at the moment, we're also looking at providing fibre to some businesses, some small business hubs that we have. We've got 7 sites at the moment that we've given to Openreach to come back with a price for. And there are 150 plus businesses, SMEs, that work across those sites. So we're looking for them to come back to us with a price for fibring up all of those businesses. Those businesses are not included in Project Gigabit, simply because the nature of the buildings are what BT and Openreach and Virgin Media would describe as multi-dwelling units.
Sorry to interrupt. We've been going for quite a while on this, so could we wrap things up a little bit, please, if that's all right?
Yeah, I'm done now.
I mean, no offence, but I'm quite interested in what you're saying, but...
Yeah. Sorry, I do tend to rabbit on. I do apologise. So. I just want to give everybody an idea of where we were, but yeah, I'm done. So, no, I'm fine now, thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, on to questions then. Councillor Dyer.
Thank you, Steve. I find it fascinating, really do. And I think the anecdote that you had about you can have a brand new Ferrari, but driving it down a farm track sums it up for some areas in the county. So thank you. And I think you know, you've got a vast wealth of knowledge on this area. So it's great to have you providing this brief for all members of the council. Just one bit that I wanted to quiz you on, if I may. It's 1.9, and it's the bit you like the least, the mobile coverage. I think there's the target of 88% of UK landmass covered by June 2024. Can you just define within these what coverage means? Because I know I can be in uphill Waddington, which you appreciate is just outside of Lincoln, and I can't report a pothole on Fix My Street. So there is coverage just about. But how good can that coverage be to be included within those stats? Thank you, Chairman.
Very, very grey area, Councillor Dyer, as you know. The coverage is basically one provider. So, for instance, if you, as part of the 88%, Vodafone may cover one small area, but that would be included in the 88%. And of course, the difficulty is if you look where I live in Skellingthorpe, you know, if I'm on O2 and it shows that the area is covered, but in actual fact, when they drill them on their map, there's this little piece where I live, you know, in a cul-de-sac which isn't covered. So, but doubtless that would be showing that when you look at the bigger map, it's covered off as it's covered. So, and of course, the other thing with the mobile signal is much the same as Wi-Fi, is that it works better in some areas than not. I mean, if you're inside. If you're in a building or you're in a building that's got a lot of metal in the building, it doesn't like it. 4 and 5G, the higher the frequency, the less likely it is to pass through buildings, pass through stone walls, similar to Wi-Fi. So it's a very, very grey area. I mean, it's much easier with fibre to say, right, you know, there's my router, there's my speed test from there. Where with mobile, it depends on the handset, what type of handset you got, the sensitivity of said instrument. So you may have a Samsung, I may have an Apple, and we both on, say, O2, and we stand next to one another, and your signal's better than mine, or vice versa, you know. So sadly, the answer lies is a bit of a grey area, I'm sorry. But the good news is that when Vodafone and Elon Musk kick off their remote access, you might get a better signal then. Probably have to pay for it, but it will give, I think it gives people a lot more options than are there at the moment. Thanks.
Councillor Corey.
Thank you, Chairman. This is your detailed explanation, which is absolutely fascinating, and I know that we're time-bound, which is quite sad, but it really is illustrative of the difficulties of delivering services in a rural community. And it is an arms race, although I like your analogy with the Ferrari, and everyone's picturing you rumbling down a farm track in your Ferrari right now. But
I wish I could afford one.
Yeah. But it really is true, though, that the more you can do within days, the more you'll need. And it's that arms race all the time trying to keep up. So with that, I don't know whether to be excited about the future or depressed. But either way, I'm grateful that you're doing the work you're doing and that Councillor Kelly is supporting you in that. And we need to, keep going out to the commercial market. And local government and central government does step in when there's market failure, and it is really difficult. We do want SMEs to enter the market, but getting these people to work together is really difficult. So thank you, Stephen, for everything you're doing. It's been a fascinating presentation.
Thank you.
Councillor Condell. Thank you, Councillor Corey.
Again, thank you very much for the explanation. I just want to come back to Gigabit Lock 10.
Yeah.
Originally, there were some delays. Is it now back on track? And how do we measure that it's staying on track? I know Councillor Kelly is sending emails, but...
Well, it's missed the original targets, clearly, because connecting started in April of this year. So, clearly the targets, the milestones that they would have had built into their contract has now gone completely. What will happen now is that when their deployment plan, their detailed deployment plan is agreed with BDUK, they will have milestones built in that they have to get to every quarter. So, for instance, if I look at Lot 23, I get a meeting every week with Quickline and BDUK, and I get a detailed report with spreadsheets, graphs, and all sorts of other good stuff that comes through every week that tells me exactly where they are against the target, which premises they've upgraded, and so on and so forth. So we get a massive amount of detail that comes back. So I think if ever they get to kick it off, we're fairly comfortable that we'll be able to monitor and see where they are. If there is any failure in terms of their overall delivery, then we have seen in other areas where BDUK have taken the contract off the incumbent supplier and given it to somebody else. I'm pretty confident that City Fibre, being as big as they are, shouldn't have that problem. Quickline, touch wood, as I say, are going great guns at the moment. So, there's a degree of confidence, and the measurements are in place to give us that confidence as well.
Councillor East.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Stephen, for your report. It does strike me that it's a big ball of string and it's quite a mess. And, and like Councillor Corley just said, an arms race, if we'd have just waited another 6 weeks, we'd probably been talking about just having 5G and satellites. That does make sense instead of putting down cables everywhere. I mean, for example, I have a big, I represent a big rural area where a village, South Kyme, has had half a delivery of Quickline. And, when I push them, they say, well, we're not going to do the other half. And so I do wonder why they seem to think they're achieving such high percentages of delivery. It just doesn't appear to be like that. And given the confusion, I would question their whole, statistics. I just think it's a bit, they're being a bit ambitious. I don't think they're realistic.
The numbers, we know the numbers are realistic in terms of, what they're doing. We go out regularly and check ourselves anyway, so we know, what they say they do. Why have they done half of a community? What happens is, BDUK work on what they call an open market review, a rolling open market review. And what does that mean? It means that BDUK go to industry, so every known provider in the county provides BDUK information every 6 months of what they've done and what they're planning on doing in the next few years. So it could well be, and I need to look into the detail on it, but it could well be that certain postcodes in South Kyme, for instance, maybe Openreach has said they're going to be there next year. And the difficulty is, of course, that you can't spend public funding where those plans exist. It's duplication of expenditure is seen as potentially distorting the commercial market as well. So it could be that. Uncomfortable they got the numbers, I know they have, but it could be that. But I'd be very happy if there's anything like that, send it over to me and I'll see what I can find out for you.
Okay, and just further then, is the voucher scheme still open to everybody?
Theoretically.
Okay.
Theoretically, yes. If the community wish to discuss it, I'm very happy to come along to the parish council meetings.
So I could dial that into the parishes
please,
and say,
I'd be very happy to come along.
okay,
So
very good.
I enjoy travelling around the countryside and meeting
Good.
people. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, Councillor Kelly.
Apologies. Yeah, I just want to add also that we've written to the BDUK on several occasions now, with the last letter going on as of the 2nd of this month. If we don't get a response from BDUK, the provider, then we'll be writing to the government because that's the next steps. You know, we've had radio silence in reality to the letter that went out prior to the one on the 2nd of September, which isn't good enough. And, you know, I put these down to realistically not operational delivery failures, but strategic level failures, you know, within probably the contracting architecture, the contract resources, and also the contract management. So those are my likely causal factors that are creating the issues here. However, it's still not an excuse. If they are contracted to deliver, then they should deliver as per the statement of requirements. And it's up to us to hold them and the government to account, which we will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? No? Okay, moving on. I'll move the proposal that's written in the report. Is there any dissent? No? It's unanimous then. And would we like to go for a 10-minute break? Yeah? All right. Be back at past. All right, welcome back, everybody. And we're going to move on to item 7. Could I also just remind everybody to speak into your microphones, because some people online are saying they couldn't really hear on the stream there. So anyway, item 7, approach to regional energy planning submissions. The scrutiny report can be found on pages 51 to 58. This report outlines the complexity of energy provision in Lincolnshire, highlighting its impact on growth and the potential visual effects of infrastructure. It explains the key actors and structures shaping regional energy planning and how the council can engage with the process. Members are asked to provide guidance on addressing gaps in energy provision while managing the impact of major infrastructure ahead of the forthcoming consultation on the Transitional Regional Energy Strategy. Report will be presented by Mandy Ram, Funding and Investment Manager, and Vanessa Strange, Head of Infrastructure Investment, is also present for the debate. Over to you, Mrs. Ram.
Thank you, Councillor French. As the Chair's said about this report, it acknowledges that energy provision is very complex. It is in as much as it's a fast-moving policy arena and it has multiple actors. If I focus primarily on electricity today, that's the case in 3 areas. So we've got large-scale infrastructure planning and delivery, and if I term that energy transmission, that's moving the high-voltage electricity long distances between the power sources themselves to substations. Secondly, the technical planning and supply of energy to end users, that's termed energy distribution for the purposes of today. Delivering low voltage electricity to homes and businesses via local substations, transformers, etc. And then if we look at the number of central, regional and local players that are outlined in the report that are involved in this whole energy provision, that's including the DNOs, the distribution network operators. They're primarily in this area, that's NGAD. The report sets out some context for all 3 of those, but it's the second one, that the energy distribution, that I'd like to focus on today, and that's how we deliver that energy to homes and premises. This is a new national approach, so unlike the previous report, which is a long-established broadband initiative, both nationally and locally, this is a new approach to regional energy planning, and it's been established by government to identify future investment needs, to join up the regions and the economic sectors through joint decision making, and to support investment decisions based on regional needs. So that identifies where network upgrades are needed and accelerating energy projects that support housing, economic and transport needs. If the concept of regional energy planning is new, so is NESO, the National Energy Systems Operator that oversees it, and they are in charge of planning for the whole of the energy network. The system is underpinned by a hierarchy of plans that are set out in the report, including the SSEP, which is the Strategic Spatial Energy Plan, and that aligns energy and transmission infrastructure to provide a national spatial energy view between 2030 and 2050, so we've still got a long lead-in time to that. The second one that's outlined in the report is the CSNP, the Centralised Strategic Network Plan. And that's a 25-year national roadmap for energy transmission. But as I say, for our focus today, it's about that distribution element, and then that's the TRESP, the Transitional Regional Energy Strategic Plan. Transitional because it takes us to an enduring RESP. It's all fancy language, but the TRESP is going to be certainly 2026 onwards until at least 27, when the enduring RESP will replace it. The drafting is designed to be bottom up, based on active engagement with an influence from local areas. Unlike the transmission-focused SSEP and the CSNP and NSIPs, they're all based on top-down consultation. The TRESP is deliberately designed to be informed by local knowledge of what growth needs servicing in a particular area, where it is and what time frame it's needed. That affords the Council quite a significant opportunity to influence future energy provision in Lincolnshire in this context, based on what residents, businesses and developers are actually telling us at this point. That's around energy affordability, availability and resilience, together with our knowledge of local plans and key development site needs that we're aware of. We know already that energy capacity is a major issue in the county, and that's set out in figure 1 of the report, demonstrating that power demand is forecast to far outstrip capacity by around 2032, and certainly in certain places. This means that energy supply could become a major constraint to growth. And on that basis, officers have been engaging throughout the TRES process to learn more about what that process is and to be in a position to influence it when the drafting process comes through. We've also included championing the whole of Greater Lincolnshire through this process with input enabling us to effectively have an East Midlands RESP. Originally, the proposal was that Greater Lincolnshire would be split into 2, and that would dilute our influence and our capacity to generate our local needs. The TRES will be released imminently, or in its draft form. We haven't seen it. We don't know necessarily what it's going to look like at this stage. And the Council will have at that point this opportunity to represent that local growth priority. And we want to ensure that NISO, as the drafter of that report, is aware of where the housing growth is planned so that it can happen in an expected time frame and not be delayed by appropriate connections to the grid, and the same for our key sectors, where they're planning to expand, what we're aware of, any upgrades, so that they too can benefit from timely connection. That's important particularly for our agri-food sector, advanced manufacturing and defence, where the businesses are continually telling us that they are constrained by energy opportunities. We've seen that in areas, particularly Grantham, the Fez at Holbeach, and the SMEP, the Sleaford Moor Enterprise Park in NK. So there are real hotspots where there's been issues in terms of accessing energy. If we don't engage with NISO through this process, it could mean that some of our businesses may even be forced to relocate or we lose inward investment to the county. So it's an important opportunity to take. So to summarise, the TRESP is primarily about energy distribution. It's substation to end user. It isn't about necessarily direct influence on pylons and grid upgrades. Current data suggests that there is a current and growing substation capacity issue in this area, and it will constrain our planned growth in Lincolnshire, and this is an opportunity to make a case for investment through the TRES process. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Corey.
Thank you, and thank you, Mandy, for your presentation. So, can you tell me where we are with geothermal? I know this is something that comes and goes. Sometimes it's in fashion, sometimes it isn't, and it's not suitable for across the UK, which is probably why it hasn't had really any central government support. But as I understand it, Lincolnshire is geologically blessed in that regard, and actually geothermal is suitable for district heating or energy supplies. And one of the criticisms that our communities have been expressing quite vociferously is that pylon blight that we're currently facing across the east of our county isn't bringing any energy benefits with it. We get the pylon blight, Essex gets the power. So geothermal would give us that local energy. So is that on our radar at the moment, or is that, I know it's got like nuclear, it's got huge upfront investment needs, but there is I think a 10, 15 year payback on this. So if you could, have you got any details on that? Or Vanessa, I see
if you don't. I'll step in on that one, Councillor Corey, because I think it's part of that wider energy conversation, isn't it, which is really interesting. Excuse me. Councillor Kelly said earlier, when we go out and talk to businesses, it's the what 3 questions keep you awake at night, and I'm sure you all have those conversations with businesses, and increasingly energy is one of those things, isn't it? And certainly our energy intensive businesses, so things like glass houses in particular. I think it's a kind of an emerging space, but up at Risehome, the new glass house, which is to be open shortly, has used just that technology and the savings that they're looking to demonstrate, and that whole building, I'm sure you're aware, the whole building of the glass house is about demonstrating kind of changes that businesses could make in their planning for energy intensive businesses. So I think we've got a couple of things that we can do as a county council in that space in helping sort of showcase some of those things. We're having an event for agri-food and defence businesses shortly. We'll be taking them up there. We're hoping to get a minister up there as well soon to get a bit of noise and traction in that. So I guess our role in that space is showcasing kind of collaboration with businesses in terms of growth, and then nationally it's about sort of shining the light on what Lincolnshire's doing and maybe demonstrating that there are other options as well for government policy, particularly where the landscape is suitable. And I think you're right, the sort of research demonstrates that Lincolnshire's unique geography could be a really interesting place for that kind of technology. So sort of aligned to what we're talking about today, isn't it? And certainly something I think we'll hear more about in the future.
Councillor Dilks.
Thank you, Mandy, for your excellent report and presentation. I particularly like Vanessa's shining the light analogy on Lincolnshire. I'm sure we all do. And I look forward to seeing a report with that title at some point. But Vanessa will claim the credit for it. We all know that energy, the energy we all have to pay for in our homes, and perhaps more significantly, the energy that industry needs for growth, is some of the most expensive in the world. We all want cheaper energy. We keep being promised it. And the report highlights the dilemma on the road to achieve that, and the fact that it is, as it says in the report, a complex issue. I do welcome the government introduction of this new approach to establishing energy strategies across the country, which, as the report says, involves consultation with local authorities, us hopefully, and other bodies to meet the county's energy needs, identified needs, and ensure the right growth in the right place. But also, hopefully, it needs to be at the right time. And that's now, isn't it, if not yesterday? We've all heard politicians, local politicians, campaigning against nuclear in Lincolnshire for perhaps understandable reasons. I'm aware that some of us want to follow Trump's drill baby drill mantra to promote fracking and fossil fuels. And at the same time rail against solar panel and onshore wind farms. I'm not sure about geothermal, Lindsay. It's easy, of course, to say no to everything that somebody else proposes, particularly when politics get in the way. The reality check surely has to be that cheaper energy is vital if we are to achieve growth in Lincolnshire's economy that we all want. This council must do what's necessary to engage with realistic proposals to achieve that, both for the residents we represent and for our industrial base and those who want to come here and create jobs. That's why I support the conclusion of this report on page 57, which, can I just say, says the regional energy planning policy is a critical step in supporting future growth in the county. Participation will support the pace and capacity of local energy provision available when and where it's needed. There will undoubtedly be lengthy lead times to energy infrastructure investment, but the new approach is clearly something that this council can engage in and effectively and actively influence. I welcome that, I really do. This, after all, is the Growth Committee, or Growth Scrutiny Committee. We have to be realistic, and I believe that means compromising these issues may well be appropriate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dilks. Councillor Condell.
Thank you very much. Going on from the geothermal, we've talked about shale. We have hundreds of solar panels being put up, none of the electricity coming into Lincolnshire itself. And we've also talked about nuclear, though I'm going to talk about SMRs, which are nuclear, but slightly different context from what was spoken about before. Has there been any thought put into having SMRs built in the area or close by the area to supply the electricity that we are going to need going forward?
I think the actual generation and the source of the energy is one thing. The report is looking about the distributed element of it. So what we get is what we're given in some ways. But related to that, in terms of SMRs, AMRs, etc., there has been some mapping exercises across the Midlands looking at what the opportunities might be to host SMRs, etc. And we are looking into that, what that might mean for Lincolnshire, to bring something back at a future date to the Scrutiny Committee.
Councillor East.
Thank you, Chair. I support geothermal with Councillor Corley. I think it is a underestimated source of relatively low-cost energy, which would help the county substantially. But just looking at the map on page 52, which is the power demand by 2032, is that proposed infrastructure, or is that current infrastructure? And what are the little green balloons? What does that stand for?
I believe that was taken from the energy options analysis, which RLB, which was Ryder, Levitt and Bucknell, a consultancy, produced for us. So what they looked at was demand mapping. So I think it's a combination of both. So it's taken a state of play as was and then forecast that against expected growth.
Okay, thank you. So is this, just to be clear, is it what we forecast to facilitate the future demand?
That's correct.
Are there any more questions? Councillor Dyer?
Thank you, Chairman. It's quite difficult, it might just be me, quite difficult for me to get my head around this body and this organisation and how that fits into the wider net zero agenda. You don't need me to repeat, the many councillors' concerns in respect to intermittent energy generation, battery storage, etc., etc. My concern is here, and I understand we need to be involved shaping, and this is all about, the transmission, but actually us being part of this organisation and taking an active role in this, are we in effect allowing this net zero agenda to move forward? I suppose my question is, what are the consequences to this council if we weren't to be involved in this organisation? Would this continue to move forward without our influence? And I think Councillor Dilks, you read out the recommendation within the report, and the word that stood out to me the most as a concern was to engage in and actively influence. So we're not going to actually get any power here. We're just hopefully going to be listened to, and I hope we are listened to. But really, what are we facilitating potentially by being a part of this? I don't think anybody in this chamber would, well, I don't want to speak for you guys, but would want to be seen to be, supporting and allowing, intermittent energy generation, battery storage. I don't want to speak on behalf of Reform councillors, but that's certainly our view. So I hope that makes sense. I'm just a bit concerned what we're potentially agreeing to as a council.
I think at this point in time, we don't know what this TRESP is going to look like. We will see that in the coming weeks. But we won't be a member or affiliate of this organisation. We're just responding to the organisation as a consultee, and a very important consultee for Lincolnshire. If we don't input to it, then we don't get our needs, priorities, our knowledge imparted into that process. It'll be an assumption made on what NESO, what information they hold at this point in time. What we can do is make it site specific. We get down to that granular detail. We need X amount of energy to this site by 2030. So that's built into the process. And if we're not in it, we can't influence it. It isn't giving a rubber stamp to that source of energy again. It's just making sure we are connected at the right time in the right place.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for explaining that. I think it's important that we are around the table then for these discussions. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? All right, I'll move on to the proposal within the report. Is there any dissent against the proposal from the report? No. The vote is carried. On to item 8, Connect to Work programme, procurement strategy. This scrutiny report can be found on pages 59 to 80 of the agenda pack. This report outlines the National Connect to Work pilot, for which Lincolnshire County Council is the accountable body for Greater Lincolnshire, and explains how local delivery has been designed to support businesses, particularly SMEs, in building capacity and filling hard to recruit roles. The report will be presented by Jenny Eaton, Partnership Manager of Connect to Work, and Jenny Ryden, Principal Officer for Learning and Skills, and Samantha Harrison, Head of Economic Development, is also present for the debate. Over to you, Miss Eaton.
Hello, thank you, Chairman. If I would be able to just open the paper, and then I'll hand over to Jenny if that's okay. So I just wanted to say, you may recall at the last meeting that we had Jenny Reardon here and Thea Croxall talk about the adult learning strategy and the work that we're undertaking there. So within that paper, there was an appendix, and we've put it in this paper as well. It states 27 programmes that are being delivered across Greater Lincolnshire that link in to the skills and employment agenda. So Connect to Work is one of these 27. It's a brand new programme that has been developed, and we have been selected as the delivery agent, the accountable body for the programme for the next 5 years. So it's really an honour to be bestowed the money and operate this pilot across Lincolnshire, but it is quite a large-scale programme that we need to get our teeth into. So the programme is part of the government's Get Britain Working strategy, and it's really about building on the learning from previous programmes that have happened across the UK. And what we're trying to do here is focus on impacts that directly affect our businesses. And we hear from businesses time and time again that they are struggling to fill their hard-to-recruit vacancies across the patch through a variety of sectors. So this programme is really tailored to provide hand-holding support to individuals who are currently not working or who are in work but at risk of dropping out of work, and how we can get them to continue on their work progression. So it's really about tailored business solutions and working in partnership, and we're really keen to make that fit. So it fits in with our adult learning agenda, but also our growth agenda in terms of supporting our businesses to develop and grow. So I'll hand over to Jenny now to go through a little bit more of the technical details in relation to it. Thank you.
Thank you. So the report provides some background information on Connect to Work, which, as Samantha mentioned, is a new 5-year national pilot funded by the Department for Work and Pensions. It aims to support people with disabilities, long-term health conditions and other complex disadvantages, but who want to work, and to help them move into employment or help them to retain their job if they're at risk of dropping out of work because of their personal circumstances. Although it is a national programme, Lincolnshire County Council has, as the accountable body for Greater Lincolnshire, the autonomy to design it for the distinctly Lincolnshire flavour, promoting integration with existing strategies across health, growth and industry, avoiding duplication and adding value to other LCC services. Connect to Work builds on the learning from previous employment programmes, such as Work and Health and Building Better Opportunities, but expands the scope significantly. It introduces 2 nationally recognised models, individual placement and support, and the Supported Employment Quality Framework, and integrates health, social care and employment services. Unlike traditional programmes, it focuses on long-term personalised support and includes in-work support for up to 12 months, with a strong emphasis on employer engagement and retention. Economic inactivity places a burden on public services, reduces productivity and limits the local labour pool. We know there are 160,000 economically inactive people in Greater Lincolnshire, a group which includes people with disabilities, long-term health conditions, carers, students and people who've taken early retirement. Not all of this group is able to work, however we do know that 25,000 people do want to, but struggle to overcome their underlying barriers.
Appendix C goes into more detail about the specific target groups that the programme aims to reach. For example, military veterans, ex-offenders, carers, each of whom face their own unique barriers to employment. Approximately 85% of the participants will be economically inactive when they join the programme, and they will be offered support for 12 months initially, with the option to extend if necessary. The remaining 15% of places on the programme will be available to people who are in work or self-employment, but at risk of falling into economic inactivity. Support for this cohort will be more intensive and available for 4 months, but again with the option to extend in certain circumstances. The programme will be delivered using the tried and tested supported employment models, which offer participants personalised support tailored to their needs, including intensive one-to-one work with an employment specialist, CV writing and interview preparation to get people into work within an average of 3 months. This will be followed by in-work support for the participant and the employer to help keep the individual in their post and help them plan for career progression. A typical participant's journey is outlined in Appendix A. The paper asks for your input on the offer to SMEs. In section 1.6, I have outlined how we'll connect to businesses and how we hope to make engagement with the programme attractive to employers at a time when we know they face increasing operating and staffing costs. We're building a package of support that should particularly benefit SMEs, and this should help to reduce recruitment costs through matching suitable candidates with available jobs, improve staff retention and foster inclusive employment practices through reviewing recruitment and induction processes, exploring flexible working arrangements and help to gain accreditation such as Disability Confident. And we'll be offering a rolling programme of workshops and networking events to help with accessing funding and tackling hard to fill vacancies. We will be working closely with the Chamber of Commerce, Federation of Small Businesses, local business networks, Team Lincolnshire and the Business Lincolnshire Growth Hub to ensure that employer support meets identified needs, and with our colleagues in the Economic Development Team and DWP to identify the types and locations of hard to fill vacancies and connecting them to the pool of participants. And this is discussed in a bit more depth in section 1.7. As well as a small element of in-house delivery, which will build on the very successful local supported employment programme delivered by LCC's Adult Social Care team, the delivery partner network will be an important feature in how the programme retains its local focus. Procurement of this network is currently underway, using an open framework that seeks to reduce the barriers for smaller local providers, as we've heard earlier, and to help them build capacity to take on larger contracts in the future. This model also offers the flexibility to reopen the framework in the future to address any gaps in provision that may emerge. Finally, the report outlines the robust governance and performance management measures that will be in place to ensure that the programme offers a high quality and value for money service to local residents and businesses. Members of the committee are invited to review and comment on the plans for the Connect to Work programme, and in particular to offer any suggestions about it, how it could develop the offer to local SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Dilks?
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you for the report. I enthusiastically support the government's new National Connect to Work programme and the plan to use it locally to deliver support to local businesses in helping them build capacity and be more efficient in filling hard to recruit vacancies. There clearly is a problem with people of working age who are able to work, many, as the report says, want to work, but remain economically inactive. However, I'm very disturbed by the statistics quoted in the report, particularly in the table on page 62 attributed to the government's DWP department. To suggest, as it does, that over half of all working people in South Kesteven are economically inactive is, in my view, highly questionable, to say the least. We all know that, I'll probably not say that line about lies, damn lies and statistics. I'll delete that one. But this table does seem to support that theory. To me, it doesn't marry with my experience in my own patch, which is the beautiful south of the county, South Kesteven. If it were true that more than half of those of working age across South Kesteven are economically inactive, surely the local economy simply wouldn't function as we know it does. I caution against relying on what appears to me to be questionable data to determine policy of this council. I do support the recommendation, however. I really do question whether the credibility of the data has been thoroughly questioned before it's been included in a report to influence decision makers in determining policy. How confident can we be that this information is robust and that those what is being given are seriously accredited national statistics? For example, does this table include over 16-year-old school attenders? And more significantly, does it include those who have retired, i.e. pensioners, who in the main we wouldn't expect to be economically active? I'll leave it there, but thank you.
Thank you for the question. The data does come from the Department of Work and Pensions. It does just capture the working age population, so that's 18 to 65. So it wouldn't include retired people. It would just require, if there's anybody who's retired in there, it would be early retired.
Thank you.
Councillor East. Well, Robinson, sorry, go on.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the report. Just looking at the example on Appendix A, the IPS participant's journey on Connect to Work scheme. It says the programme is entirely voluntary and the motivation to work is assessed as part of the suitability criteria. How is motivation to work actually measured? Like most motivation, it comes with action. So would the scheme support and strongly encourage individuals as much as possible to be part of this scheme to improve our productivity? Thank you.
Thank you. So there is a robust eligibility and suitability assessment process before people are accepted onto the programme. We do, to some extent, have to take that on trust. If people say they want to work, then we have to believe them, and that's very clear in the national guidance. What we tended to find in previous programmes is that people won't come forward for this sort of programme unless they are at least interested. And as part of the assessment process, we will be talking to them in depth about their barriers, about their aspirations, about what sort of work they'd like to do, what sort of work would be suitable for them, what measures could be put in place to make it accessible for them. And that will be thoroughly explored with the individual as part of the vocational planning process for them. But as I say, we do to some extent have to take it on trust. It's inevitable that some people may drop out of the programme as it goes along because changes of circumstances, changes of health, that's beyond our control, but we will do everything we can to retain people in the programme and to make sure that it's the right programme for them. And if there's any doubt over that, we're going to make sure there are clear referral pathways out of Connect to Work into other programmes that are more suitable for them if perhaps they have perhaps too great a clinical need at the moment and they'd be better supported through a health service. Then we'd liaise with our colleagues in health, and then there's nothing stopping them coming back later on when things have improved a little bit for them.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kelly, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to reinforce the point that I agree in regards to the data there that shows the level of economic inactivity. However, we won't, and the direction that's been provided to the officers is that we won't be basing the allocation of funding based on that data itself. We will be looking at previous schemes, we will be looking at other feedback from external stakeholders in order to shape where that money is best targeted going forward so that we get best results for that money. Speaking from personal experience, there are members within my extended family that have been economically inactive for over a decade. You could throw as much money as them at you want, but you will never get them to work because that's just the way they are. They don't claim benefits, they're below state pension age, they are in the economically inactive bracket. So we want to ensure that we do the best we can and get the maximum, the maximum we can for the funding that we've got, and we will continue to, to monitor and measure the performance as we go through, so we can improve year on year. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Condell.
Thank you, Chair. This question doesn't only apply really to Lincolnshire, but it has a sort of knock-on effect for us or for everywhere. So does or is this information that this fund is available to people given to both military people who are coming to the end of their service and or to prisoners coming to the end of their sentences, so they are aware that there is support there for them?
Yes, support hasn't started yet, so we're anticipating that it'll start sort of in the new year, any time between sort of February, March. What we're doing at the moment is pulling together a range of marketing materials and a communications plan. I have been engaging with veterans organisations and with the probation service and one of the boards that operates out of Lincoln Prison. We can't work with people who are in custody, but the aim is to engage with them the minute that they sort of step through the gate, once they're released, so that we can kind of make sure that problems don't snowball for them. So absolutely we are being represented on those sorts of forums, and we are engaging with those organisations to make sure we're getting the right messages to the right people at the right time. Okay, thank you.
Councillor East.
Thank you, Chair. And really supporting Councillor Dilks and Councillor Kelly's remarks that, the budget's 23.4 million, supporting how many people? I mean, disability, refugees, and I guess asylum seekers, unemployed, early retirement veterans. How many people? Have we got any statistics? We need to have something a bit stronger in our region. This is our budget, yeah?
Okay. Thank you for the question. In terms of target participants, we're looking to support 6,000 individuals across the area during the life of the programme. It's anticipated, based on sort of health statistics provided by DWP nationally, that around 75% of the individuals that we work with who are economically inactive will be due to a disability or a health condition, with the remaining participants coming from one of the wider eligibility groups. We've utilised a range of data, sort of local health reports, obviously census data, DWP data, to try and pull together those sort of 6,000 individuals and how they will hang together in terms of those groups. Does that answer the question, or?
It kind of does, but I think that we need to have a little bit more transparency on how this is broken down.
We would be happy to have a look and provide some more follow-up with a bit more detail if that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's a very large amount of money, and we need to know how it's proportioned.
Absolutely, we'll provide a more detailed breakdown of that.
Councillor Dyer, is this related to the... Yeah, go on then.
I think it's the problem with following the elections. Of course, there was a change in administration, and because of that, all the performance data that would normally come to this committee, where I assume the performance of this scheme and previous schemes does get reported to these committees, don't they? Because of the election and the change in administration and the change in priorities, none of this performance data that's currently there is coming to this committee. I think, from what I understand, there's a black hole for performance reporting for just short of a year until you guys have got your new corporate plan and got that agreed, which is fine. These things take time. But I think it's a weakness in scrutiny because actually there's officers that are working away, schemes that are happening right now that are still judged on the previous administration's performance data that actually isn't being reported at all to any scrutiny committee. And that was a decision that was made, I would assume, at leader and chief executive level. And I think that's a weakness in this system, that actually we're in the dark as of a committee because we can't see the performance data in the background to that. So I was actually going to mention it later on. I think we should be seeing this data as a committee because, you know, we're a few months in now and I think we're in the dark. But I'll make that point later.
I fully agree with you, actually. It appears to be a black hole, but then this is a new budget, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, may I come in,
Go on.
please? Sorry, in terms of the programme, because it is a brand new programme, we've got to ramp up the activity, and sort of that 6,000 that Jenny mentioned will increase over the duration. But what we've had to submit a delivery plan about how we're going to allocate the funding, but it's based on 3 lots that have been put out through our procurement opportunities. So we're looking at specific support for rural areas, specific support for urban areas, looking at areas of deprivation where we think we can get and reach the numbers based on the modelling opportunities that we've got. So in terms of where activity will specifically happen, we can give a ballpark figure, but we're not at this stage going to say this amount of money is going to be spent within this district. It has to follow where we're getting the referral mechanisms through, and for us it's about supporting as many local suppliers to win the money through this procurement opportunity to deliver tailored programmes. So you're looking at community groups, rehabilitation centres. The referrals are not going to come directly from DWP. This is a brand new model, so it's about us connecting with wider community organisations to feed in. So it will there will be no kind of specific breakdown. It's more about our delivery plan and how we can flex that budget in accordance with need across the area. So, and we will be looking to yourselves as councillors to let us know if there are bodies, organisations that we need to make sure that they're on that procurement opportunity as well. And it is an open framework, so they will be able to join the framework. It will open throughout the duration of the programme as well. Thank you.
Did you have a response, Councillor?
Yeah, so I understand that. Thanks for the clarification. So just to be clear, this budget is not being pushed into Department of Works or adult care. This is a standalone budget. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Corey.
Thank you. I don't know if Councillor Kelly has something on that particular. Okay, thank you. I do want to go back to Councillor Dilks's concern about the table on page 62, but thank you for the paper, and I am happy to support it. But just on this particular table, I too share his concerns about the data in this, as I'm not entirely confident that the DWP's statistics reflect the reality of North Kesteven either. So, and I thank Councillor Kelly for his comments that you are working with external stakeholders. I'm sure you are. Does that include districts? Because I know that districts do something different, but they do something quite similar. So what data do the districts hold? Their econ dev teams have got quite a lot of data on people in their districts. Many of our districts also manage their own housing stock, and they've got very good data on demographics who might fall into this realm. So what can you tell us on how you're working with districts to make sure that this data actually is trustworthy, bearing in mind that Councillor Kelly said that you are also working with different metrics? Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have regular update meetings with districts, and we will look at the validity of this data in a little bit more detail in terms of working with individuals within various departments. I think for us it's really about how we can link in. We've been given this data set to work with, but we will go back and interrogate it. We have a partnership manager with DWP, so very happy to kind of get their feedback and also their justification of the information that's in here. We notice it goes up to December 24, so it just sort of understanding what the current picture was then and if it's changed now, so we will reflect that. I know that Jenny is our new partnership manager, so Jenny will be going out and speaking with partners. She's new in post, so she's been in post only for 2 months now, so it's early days of engagement with the district councils.
Oh, Jenny, thank you and welcome. This is, we are nice people, really, but not too fiery. Thank you.
Councillor Condell.
Sorry, you've spoken about the lifetime of the project, and it does say in the document that the support would be for 5 years. Is that the total lifetime of the project?
The support for the individuals, will, depending on their circumstance, will be up to 12 months. The duration of our contract is for 5 years with the County Council, where we act as the accountable body.
Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you.
Councillor Kelly, did you want to add something?
I'd just like to share a sort of recent experience Vanessa, myself and the leader of the council had last week. We visited a company called Worldwide Fruits, and they were having issues in regards to staffing levels, you know, continuity of staffing levels, productivity, service delivery, etc. And, you know, they approached lots of different organisations, and they approached the prison service, and they began to employ prisoners. But it was a very proactive, innovative approach they took to resolve their manning issues, and it's proven to be a very good, successful story. There's high levels of conversion with the prisoners who've taken up employment with Worldwide Fruits, and it has been very beneficial not only to the well-being of the prisoners, etc., but also for the business itself as well. Now, I know that this scheme doesn't cover currently prisoners, you know, it's prisoners once released and such like, but I personally, you know, would like to see this scheme open up, you know, to provide that support to those businesses where it's possible that they can, you know, use the services of prisoners going forward, because it benefits the prisoner, benefits the business, the local community, and you know, and it's a win-win for all. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And do we have any more questions? Nope. All right. Moving on to the proposal. I'll move the proposal from the report. Is there any dissent? No. It's unanimous. On to item 9, the Grove Scrutiny Committee Work Programme. This is the last item on the agenda today, and the report can be found on pages 81 to 85. The item enables the committee to comment on the content of its work programme. The report will be presented by Chiara Hatsuanu, the scrutiny officer. So our actions are to review the programme and highlight any additional scrutiny activity which could be included for consideration in the work programme. Over to you, Chiara.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, the work programme for this committee is a standing agenda item which aims to give a snapshot of the work streams that will be the composite of this committee's agendas for 2025-2026, and indeed where we are able to tell beyond. The purpose is to ensure that scrutiny remains focused, constructive, fair and independent, and that it enhances transparency of the operation and decision making of this council, as well as strengthen accountability of decision makers. I would like to make you aware of some certain changes made to the work programme since the publication of this report pack. Changes occur as this is a document that is a living organism, and it keeps evolving and being shaped constantly with your input, as well as in line with changes and needs for decision making arising within the council. The changes I have to report to you today are pertinent to the items that I will now discuss with you. Already listed in our next meeting, we have the Defence Sector Incubator Space, which is now published on the forward plan for a decision, and that will be an Executive Councillor's decision between the 29th of October and 7th of November 2025. So the only change there is that it's no longer just a scrutiny report, it is a decision-making item. The second change I have to report is pertinent to the removal of an item entitled Coastal Car Park Strategy Review, which has now been moved across to the Environment Scrutiny Committee, as the thematic area is pertinent to the economic portfolio. Third change to be reported is a deferral of the County Farms Estate Strategy item from the agenda for October's meeting to that of the meeting in December for this committee. And this is to ensure that the report on the strategy and associated updates are robust and thorough, as this will be the first time that this committee cohort will review this thematic area. Lastly, there was an item entitled 2026-2027 Capital Repairs and Maintenance Funding, which is due for a decision by the Executive on the 6th of January. And it will be now considered by the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board. And that is due to constraints posed by the sequencing of activities and checkpoints required for the report and decision ahead of being published to be made. The rest of the report that you have in your packs and future agendas will remain the same. However, I would like to acknowledge that changes have resulted in us having a very heavy agenda anticipated for the committee's meeting in December. I would therefore like to give members assurances that following today's meeting, I will be liaising with officers to review future agendas and renegotiating timetables where appropriate for future items and presentations so that the workload of this committee remains more balanced. Any further changes will be advised through the next published iteration of this report. Finally, as always, I would like to encourage members of this committee to share your own suggestions of topics and thematic areas pertinent to the portfolio that falls within this committee's remit, both at public meetings, but also you can always approach me offline at your convenience and have a discussion with me. And this concludes my update to you, and I'm at your disposal for anything further and any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chiara. Councillor Dyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I'm going to reel off a few points just based on what Chiara's just said. First of all, I don't think you mentioned it. We've had previously discussions about the windmill strategy and the traveller strategy, the traveller site strategy. If memory serves me correct, they will come forward to scrutiny at some point. I can't find them on this document, but am I correct in saying because they cross two service areas, they're going direct to OSMB? I'm not putting you on the spot now, but if that is correct, can I request that they also come to this committee, given how I think there'll be significant public interest in both of those, and I appreciate it's not the done thing, but I would appreciate this either coming pre or post this decision, whatever suits, so that we as a committee can have a look. Secondly, can I request that the performance data that currently isn't being reported is put to this committee, please? I've explained it previously, I'm not going to repeat myself. And final 2 points just based on what you've just said there, Chiara. Firstly, the removal of the 2026-2027 capital repairs and maintenance funding. I think, hopefully the committee agrees with me, that's a pretty big agenda item in a service area that we're responsible for scrutinising. And I'm quite disappointed that because of a diary clash or whatever, that is being scrapped and sent to OSMB. So I don't know what the committee think about that, but I think that is disappointing. That should be coming to this committee. It's what we're here to do. We shouldn't be outsourcing it to OSMB. So I'm very much against that. And I'd like to put on record that I think we should still have an opportunity to scrutinise that budget. And I'd like to think colleagues would agree with me. And finally, and this is a proper finally, coastal car park review strategy. Obviously, I was involved in that in the previous administration. I can see the ambiguity in between the two environment side and economic development side. But can you just provide more justification on why that isn't being reported to me? Again, coastal car park, encouraging people to visit our coast. I think that relates to growth and the local economy. So can you justify why environment trumps that argument, please? Sorry to provide you with a few, but...
No, that's absolutely fine. Yes, I do like a challenge. So, first of all, in terms of the strategic documents that you've referenced at the beginning, any paper that is pertinent to strategy, whether be that an update or a refresh or a construction of a new strategic document to be used in the future, will be normally attached to a decision to be made, which means that for me to have solid information about it, it has to be published in the forward plan or a notice for publication to be given in advance. Therefore, I cannot feed the work programme with whispers about potential dates. So yes, it is on our radar. However, it cannot be an informed piece of the agendas until I have a proper notice. Number two, in terms of performance, I'd like to just indicate that on our meeting of the 9th of December 2025, we will receive the service level performance reporting against performance framework for 2025-2026 for quarters 1 and 2. It's already on our agendas, and the rest of the quarterly performance will be rolling back in a steady form going forward. Number three, in relation to the pre-decision item, that has now been removed and will be taken by the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board. I appreciate your concerns, and I reserve the right to come back to you offline and to the rest of the members of the committee in terms of getting you an appropriate response why that has been that decision has been made in terms of what events have triggered that need for extra time, and therefore it's not suitable to realign it with this committee for consideration, and also what alternatives we can explore in terms of getting the feedback of this committee as well. And the last item is about the coastal car park. Similar to my previous response, I will get back to you offline with a more clear, and that includes the rest of the members of the committee, obviously, with a more clear response about how the decision was made for this item. Because there are a lot of areas, especially shared between economy and highways and economy and growth, that there are a little bit of grey areas, and a decision is made where to be considered, where to be presented. That does not preclude members of this committee to have views or to wish to participate in the interactions of another committee to provide their feedback and to share their thoughts. So let me get back to you about those elements offline. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Councillor Robinson?
Thank you. Just looking at the items to be programmed, I'm not sure whether this question has been asked before, but the Steddlethorpe Geological Disposable Facility update report, what is this to update on?
Don't know why I can't get it to work in the first place. Thank you very much, Councillor Robinson. So previously, in the previous council term, we had a rolling programme of 6 monthly updates around works. Now, a decision has been made previously by this new council that engagements would be put to a stop. However, the committee has previously requested that any further updates and news that emerge from this front line be fed back for continuity purposes and to keep members of this committee up to date with what is being discussed elsewhere that will have a financial impact and environmental impact in Lincolnshire. Thank you.
Councillor Corey?
Thank you, Chairman. This is not a party political point. I thank Chiara for her detailed responses, and I look forward to coming back to us. But and I take your point about the scheduling, but I really must support Councillor Dyer on his questioning of where the coastal car park strategy review goes. The coastal car parks don't exist in their own right, and they're not in and of themselves an environmental consideration. They are there specifically and purely to support the economic development of our coastal communities. So this being, I know it's called the Growth Committee, but really it's about economic development. and I think this is the best committee for them, and it's about that economic support of our coastal communities. I think this committee is the best place for it, and I hope our colleagues support that position. So apologies, Chiara, but I'm going to support Councillor Dyer on this one.
No, thank you very much. No, that's absolutely fine. Do not worry. I will echo your concerns and Councillor Dyer's concerns in my discussions with officers offline. Thank you.
Councillor Dyer.
Chairman, sorry, if I may, who's the executive councillor that covers the coastal car parks then? Does that fall under your portfolio, Councillor Kelly, or is that one for the councillor in Skegness, whose name escapes me? Sorry.
Apologies, it covers quite a few portfolios. You've got growth, you've got highways, and what was the other one? And environment. So there's 3 portfolios it covers. So yeah, a decision will be made, but I do understand your concerns.
Yeah, I agree with you on paper as well, but maybe without the full picture, we don't know everything. So hopefully we suss that out. All right. On to the suggested proposal from the paper. I'll move the proposal. Is there any dissent? No, it's unanimous. And with that, I'll thank you all for coming, and that concludes the meeting.